Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of our series Continuous Integration and Continuous Delivery with Back4app. In the first episode, we created our projects in our GitHub repo. Today, we're going to set up all our projects and files, so stay tuned. In the last episode, we created the 3 Back4app apps where our code is going through from staging all the way to production that we called main. We also created our GitHub repo where we're going to store the CI/CD flow and all our code. We also created 3 applications in my local machine, which is going to handle the code and set up locally. We use the Back4app CLI to download these 3 applications, so one staging, 2 test, and main, 3 main. And this needs to be done by the Back4app CLI because it will bring some hidden files that you don't have access if you download the code through the dashboard. So I put all the 3 folders together here so we can take a look at these files all at the same time. So if I expand our staging app, our test app, and our main app, you'll notice all share the same structure. A cloud folder where I'm going to have my main.js file and all my cloud code structure so I can have subfolders and more files in here if I want. I also have a public folder where I'm going to store the index.html file and static files such as JavaScript and CSS files. But mainly we're going to need this .parse.local file, and this is a very important file that only is delivered to your machine if you download the app through the Back4app CLI. And if you open this file, you notice it has some JSON formatted settings in here. So the first property is named applications. And for my staging app, I have the name of the application, so one staging, and an application ID, which is the application ID for this specific application. If I open the other parse.local file, so this is for 2 tests, this is for one staging, and I'm going to open for 3 main as well, you notice every single one has the app name, the application ID, and a default that defaults to this specific application. So for staging, it defaults to staging. For test, it defaults to test. And for main, it defaults to main. And this is something very important because we need this information so our CI/CD flow will know to which app it's going to deliver the code at a given point. And we need to be sure to set which application is going to be the main application or the first level of delivery for the code. In my case here is a staging because the code is going through staging, then to test, and then to main. If you have more applications in your flow, let's say you have a development or perhaps 2 or 3 levels of testing, you need to ensure to do these settings I'm going to do right now on your entry point or in your first set of the code delivery. So in the first application where we're going to deploy your code, in my case, it's staging. So I'm going to set this one. And I'm going to go to my second application and copy the property that has its name and application ID, only this section. So I'm going to copy this. And back to the entry point, I'm going to put a comma and add my second application over here. And I'm going to do the same for my third application. I'm going to copy this property here and paste it in here after a comma. So now my entry point application has 3 applications. The first one, which somehow I lost the app ID. So let's go back and get it working. There you go. Put a comma here. Once again, I'm going to paste the second over there. Put a comma here and paste the third over there. There you go. So for my first entry point of code, which is a staging, I have in my parse.local file all 3 apps. You could have more once again. But what is important is the default is linking to the entry point or staging in my case. This is important because when I deliver code and don't specify to which application it's going to assume this one. So if at any given point I make a B4A using the Back4app CLI B4A deploy, it's going to take a default application to deploy that code to. If I specify to which one of these three I want to deploy code, the Back4app CLI is going to deploy to that app specifically. But if I don't, it's going to go to default, and it's very important that you have your entry point here, because you really don't want the CLI to deliver code, for instance, directly into production if you don't specify where it should go. Now that we've got our parse.local file completely set for our entry point application, in my case staging, but in yours could be different, we need to put all this structure that we have inside this folder inside our GitHub repo. We'll get there in a second. But right now, we can get rid of our test app and main app in my local machine, because we're not going to use this anymore locally. All the code is going through our staging app and then go automatically to test and to main deployed by GitHub. So there's no need for any of those apps anymore, except for the content of the staging app that we customized to have all three apps in the parse.local file. And in order to achieve that, we're going to need to download our CI/CD project from GitHub to my local machine so I can push in new code. You can do this on the web browser too, but I find it cumbersome to do it through the web browser. So I like to do it locally and then push it in. And the first step to get there is to download the GitHub repo to my machine. You can do that by going to this green button over here, copying this URL, and back here we can git clone and then paste the URL in. If I just run this command, wait a little bit, and it will download everything, and my GitHub repo is over here. You can expand, you'll find the git ignore file in there and the readme file in there, which is the contents that we have in the repo right now. And we now need to put all the content from the staging app into this GitHub repo here. So I'm going to select all this and move it in there. So as you can see now, I have my big Back4app CI/CD folder, which is the GitHub repo, my cloud folder and public folder from staging, and especially my local parse.local file, also from staging, that has all three apps. It could be more in your case, and setting the default to the entry point. Now I can pretty much close all the other files and even delete those folders over here, because we're not going to need that anymore. From now on, we're going only to work in the Back4app CI/CD GitHub repo. So move to trash, and this too, move to trash. So there you go. Locally, I can enter this Back4app CI/CD folder that we downloaded from GitHub to ensure it is actually a GitHub repo. So cd Back4app CI/CD, and it showed the main branch that I'm working on. So we know it is a GitHub repo. We can also check what has not been committed in here. So we can just make a git status, and you'll see that I have a few things not committed to my main branch at this point: the parse.local file, the parse project file, the cloud folder, and the public folder. This is pretty much okay and has pretty much everything we need to set up Back4app wise, but there are a few more things. As we're going to need a GitHub action to run the CI/CD, we need to set up a few file structure in there as well. So in the main directory for Back4app CI/CD, we're going to need to create a .github folder so we can host the workflows. In Mac OS or Linux, we do that by typing md to create a directory, make directory, .github. In Windows machines, it would be mkdir. So just hit enter, and there you go, my .github hidden folder showed up here. Once I have that folder, I can get into there, so cd.github, and inside there, create a workflows in plural folder that will hold all my actions. So md, once again, workflows. Remember, md for Linux and Mac OS, or mkdir for Windows users. Now, if I expand this, you see I have the workflows folder in there. And inside the workflows folder, we're going to create a file named deploy.yaml. This is the file that's going to have all our GitHub Actions steps. So cd workflows, and there are multiple ways to actually create an empty file. I like to use the command touch. That's for, once again, for Linux and Mac OS. And then the file name, which is deploy.yaml. And my deploy YAML file should appear, or you can just click with the right button here and click new file and give it a good file name. So right now we have all the structure that we need to start deploying code, but I would like to add some more steps that we're going to see in a second. Since we are setting a GitHub action to do our CI/CD process, I also like to add in here a few other tools that can help us identify possible problems with the code and also ensure all the developers are pushing code with the correct spacing and formatting that I expect. And we can do that by using a few tools such as ESLint, since we're working with basically Node.js, which is JavaScript. ESLint does the linting for the JavaScript code, looking for problems. We can also use Prettier, which is a NPM module that ensures the correct formatting is being respected. And I also like to add Jest, which is a test tool for JavaScript. Now, it's not the scope of this video to show how to set up those specifically. I'm going through very basic setup and even skip a few ones because, once again, it's not the idea of this tutorial to show you how to set up specific plugins, but you get the idea. And the first thing I'd like to do that is to create a file named package.json. We're going to specify a few variables and that will run and create the scripts and all the dependencies needed in order for our project to run. So once again, I'm going to just create an empty file, touch package.json, and my package.json file should show up over here. And we can paste in some code into here, which I'll go very quickly through. So let me paste some code over here, and we can go very quickly through it. So it's going to specify a project name, a version, a description. This is all very basic. Also a few scripts. So when I run the command lint, it's going to execute this line of code. When I run the command format, it's going to run this one, and so on. But what's important here is the dependencies. So I'm using ESLint on this specific version or higher. Also a few other plugins. I'll also be running Prettier and Jest. You can add as many dependencies in here as you need in your workflow to be sure it will check all the code and do all the compilation, or in this case, interpretation steps, to ensure the code does not break your environment before actually accepting the code into GitHub. So I'm just going to save this. And a few of these dependencies have other settings themselves. We need to create configuration files for those. Once again, it's not the intent of this video showing how to configure, so I'll be very basic about it. But anyway, the whole idea is for you to understand that all these settings for these dependencies to work should be done at this point. So let's create a new file called .prettierrc.json, where it's going to have the configuration for Prettier. So once again, touch.prettierrc.json. And here it is. I can expand this and paste some content in. So basically what I'm going to check here is the tab width, if I need a trailing comma, and the format, the print width, if it's a single quote acceptable or not. And you can find more about the Prettier RC JSON file in the documentation for Prettier, but this is going to do the job for now. So I'm going to save this. And also we're going to need a configuration file for our ESLint, which is over here. So touch eslint.config.js. It should appear. We can open this file and also paste in some configuration. I'll just save this. And this is going to import the ESLint plugin and check these file types over here. I have a few language options, a few plugins also imported. And you can find more about the ESLint configuration on their documentation. I'll leave links in the description of this video on how to set up everything. So be sure to follow that. Now we have all the code that we need in order for us to start adding our modules and adding our content to our deploy YAML file. Last but not least, we need to install all these modules and ensure everything works correctly. We'll do that by running the command npm install. So what I expect at the end of this command is to have a package.local file created over here that will specify all the modules correctly installed, and also a node modules folder created somewhere over here that will actually hold the modules. Now, if we check our git ignore file, we should have over here some place that tells that we are going to ignore the node modules folder. Here is in my line 41. So I expect the node modules folder also to be grayed out, so it won't be pushed to GitHub. You never want to actually push the contents of your node modules folder to GitHub, because that can get very big very fast. So you want a very clean GitHub repo with the package.json file being able to generate the node modules every time you run it. So let's try it out. I'm going to close all these open files and run npm install. This can take a little while. It was actually very fast, but I have my package.local.json file over here specifying all the modules and its versions, so it is correct. And I also have my node modules file folder, which is grayed out, so it will not be pushed to GitHub. And if I expand this, I have all the modules inside here, so everything is working. So there you have it, everyone. Now we have everything we need to start coding our deployment YAML file with all the CI/CD steps that you're going to have in our GitHub actions. This will be the content for the next video because this one is getting way too long. But from now on, you can have an idea of the setup that you need in order to have CI/CD working. We're going to very far in this video. I know it's very technical, and I'll leave the official documentation links for all the modules that we used in the description of this video, so be sure to check that out. So if you enjoyed this content, please leave a like in this video and consider subscribing to the channel so you'll never miss out on new content like this. Also share this video with a friend and then you can learn something too. I hope you like this content and hope to see you back on the channel soon. See you soon. Bye bye.